Good morning again. Hey, I want to invite you, if you brought a Bible, if you didn't, that's totally fine. But if you brought a Bible, I want you to open to Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31, yes, you heard that correct. Proverbs 31, typically a passage or a chapter committed to and dedicated to the worth, value, identity of women. But we're going to look at Proverbs 31 from a very different angle this morning. Matter of fact, we're not going to look at a different angle. It's going to be more the first 9 verses of Proverbs 31. And as you're turning there, I want to invite you in a conversation I had yesterday. So me and a couple of guys were talking. My son's birthday party was yesterday, and so some dads brought their sons, and so we're all sitting there playing. They're all sitting there playing, and we're just watching, and we're having this conversation about manhood, manliness. And the conversation I stepped into, and the conversation kind of revolved around yard work. And they were already having a conversation. I came in on it regarding yard work, and one of them started making fun of the other, and the comment was, "Yeah, but you got that old battery-powered weed eater." And it was kind of one of those shots like, really? Where's your manhood at? Matter of fact, he goes on to say, "But not me. I got me a gas-powered weed eater. I'm a man." And he literally went on to say that he was going to take this guy's man card. And so I come in and I have a battery-powered weed eater. So I'm tempted here. I could jump on the bandwagon and be like, "You got a battery-powered weed eater? What a weenie!" You know, like, Joy, lock the garage. Don't let him go in the garage, okay? I want to see my battery-powered weed eater in there. Or I could just be honest and tell the truth. Well, I told the truth. I said, "Man, you be knocking my battery-powered weed eater. I like that thing. It's lightweight," and I start going all the perks, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I'm going to take both of y'all's man cards right now. I got a gas weed eater, a steel gas weed eater. I'm a man." So we kind of kept talking, and as the conversation was kind of centered around yard work, we, the other two, the shamed two, me and this other guy, well, we started talking about doing the actual yard. So then we started talking about lawn mowers. So, hey, well, what kind of mower you got, man? What are you riding with these days? You know, what you got? You got a deer, huh? You got something, you know, what color is it? You know, we're talking, you know, is it a zero turn? What you got, man? You know, and we're comparing manliness again, right? Because we associate yard work with manliness. And so he and I, we mow our own yards. We get up, we get on that lawnmower, we make sure gas is in it, and I mow my own yard. It's an acre too. So it's not this little yard. Hey, the other guy's got a big yard too. And we say that, and the guy who just blasted us for saying this about the battery-powered lawnmower, when we said, "Well, what lawnmower you got?" And he went, "Oh, man, I pay somebody to mow my yard. I don't even mow it." And we were both like, "What?" Like, you just ripping us for not having the gas-powered mower because we got battery, and now you're saying you don't even mow your yard. And so, anyway, it's just funny conversation that guys will have, because the truth is, all of us have this narrative of what manhood is. We all say, you know, if you mow your own yard, then you're a man, or if you go hunting, then you're a man. So if you don't go hunting, then you're not, and we kind of bat around these things. Matter of fact, somebody came up to me later and said, "You know how I define manhood?" And I said, "How?" And they said, "You don't wear skinny jeans." And I went, all right. But again, it's how you define manhood. We all got these different ideas of what is manliness, right? I want to take you back even further to 2nd or 3rd grade. And many of y'all did science projects, right? And you kind of, we're going to lock in on this for a second. And so you did a project on airplanes or trains or geology or astrology, or if I did this, will this float? Or how does this volcano erupt? Yada, yada, yada. All of us did those. But the truth is, here's what I want to do. What if I were to ask you in the room, the men, and I'm not just talking about men, I'm talking about children, okay? 8, 9-year-olds in the room, okay? If I said to you, I want you to do a project, and here's your topic: manliness. What is a man? Now, I want you to literally, this isn't figurative. I want you to literally think about this. What if I gave every single one of you one of these poster boards? Men, you walked out of the room, and 3 weeks later, you had to come and lay them all out here across the stage of how you define manliness, manhood. You know, a lot of us would do things, we would have words on there. We would have words like work. And man, he works, and that is manhood. And so if you work out in the field, or you work with your hands, or construction job, that's manhood. But if you work in a high-rise in New York City, or you work in a different place, that's not manliness. But we, oftentimes use work to define manliness. Some of us just say you're strong, right? So you'd put on your project that manliness means strength. Some of y'all would say tough. Some people would say that manliness is you're a rebel. You just go against the grain. You kind of march to the beat of a different drum. That's manliness. Some people would define manliness by wealth. That if you, let me make sure y'all can all see this, that if you have a lot of money, you're a man. If you've built an empire, if you've built up this massive 401k for yourself, and if you've done that, if you've managed your money well and built these businesses and all these things, and you're a man. Some of us here, especially in Greene County and just in Arkansas in general, would say that if you hunt, you're a man. And if you don't hunt, you're a Yankee, right? I mean, it's like, what? You don't hunt? What in the world? Some of us define manhood by what teams we follow. That if we have a team that we follow and we like them, then, hey, that's manliness. That men, you got teams. And some of us this is what's interesting, you got some men in the room, they're the Uncle Rico men. All right, anybody watch Napoleon Dynamite? You got Uncle Rico, right? Uncle Rico, the story's pretty funny with him. He's always living in the past. He's always got football, and he's doing this all the time. And he's like, man, back in 86. We could have state. We could have taken state, man. And then he talked about, he's like, I could throw a football over those mountains. And you see him throwing, he's like this. But you've got men like that, right? That just like, man, back in high school, I was playing ball. We were running around, man. That is manliness. So you got Uncle Rico men living in the past. Then, my personal favorite, you got some John Wayne men in the room. You got John Wayne. And so manhood, we got a couple of woos. I'm sure John Wayne would be very honored by that. You got John Wayne men. Woo! Yeah, I don't know if that's really what he stood for, but nonetheless. You got the John Wayne man. He's the grit man, right? Like he's just the guy that just killed an alligator and made boots out of it immediately. His chest hair just grows uncontrollably, right? He's fighting bad guys with one hand, wrestling a cow with the other, just like, oh. And he doesn't speak much, right? He's just that emotional just wall. That is a man. And the truth is, many of these are right to a certain extent. That manhood can be defined in multiple ways. That men can be both a hunter and can also be a scholar. Men can be a professor at a seminary, and they could also be a farmer. That we can define our occupations differently, but how does God define manhood? Like if God made men and God created you and me, how does He define what a man is? If we really want to know what manliness is, we have to know what God says about it. So with that being said, I want us to dive into Proverbs 31 to answer the question, to settle the score, for us to all get on the same page, same trajectory, and say, this is manliness. Not according to our opinions, not according to what we think or what our culture says, but what does God say about a man? And I want to read the first couple of verses in Proverbs 31 as we launch into what is a godly man. Because here's spoiler alert. A godly man is two things. Two. That a godly man is a man of character and courage. That's it. That you can define manliness by two things: character and courage. Here's what I mean by that. Who you are and how you live. Who you are on the inside, or very simply, just for all of us in the room, especially men, to make it even more simple, your heart and your hands. Who you are when no one else is looking, when no one else is around, and what you do, that defines manliness. Not according to Blake, according to his word. So we're going to dive into Proverbs 31, the most unlikely passages that you would ever think to hear in a Father's Day sermon. Beginning in verse 1, the words of King Lemuel. So we're about to stop and say, who is that? Well, most commentators believe that is Solomon, that Solomon wrote the first 30 chapters. It makes sense that he wrote the last chapter in Proverbs. This is King Lemuel, but it was the name that his mother Bathsheba gave him. That's right, Bathsheba. You may have say, who is that lady? That's the lady that David had an affair with. So David and Bathsheba have an affair. They have a child. It dies. The next child is named Solomon, or nicknamed King Lemuel. And what he's laying out here is what Bathsheba, his mama, told him about manhood. So he's writing this to his own son. The words of King Lemuel, the oracle which his mother taught him. Many commentators believe that was, again, Bathsheba. What, O my son? And what, O son of my womb? And what, O son of my vow? So here is, in essence, what's about to take place. Solomon is recounting what his mama told him about being a man. In essence, here's the truth. Here's what she's doing. Solomon's mama is telling him, man up. And here's how she's laying it out. Now, for those of you in the room who, for any man in the room, another man tells you to man up, and there's some encouragement that kind of fires up in you. But when a woman steps into your life, whether it's a wife or a grandmother or a sister or maybe even a daughter, and she utters two words, man up, it strikes every emotion and muscle and fiber in our beings. There is anger, there is a stirring, there is a passion that is lit. And so right here, this mother, this woman is calling up her son to be a man. And she's going to lay out three ways in which that this man can be a man. And then for all of us, how can God and does God define manliness? What she's saying is, son, man up. So for those of you in the room who aren't ready, get ready. Because she is about to light us up. And here's what she says. First and foremost, Solomon, here's the first truth. Be a man of purity. So this sermon, character and courage. The first way she's going to lay out are two truths, two ways in which a man can have character. And the first is to be a man of purity. Here's what she says. Do not, pretty clear there, give your strength to women. And goes on to say, or your ways to that which destroys kings. So let's break that passage down for just a moment. Do not give your strength. That word is so important, strength. It literally, in Hebrew, it means a lot of different things. Like we would define it, literally translators, every single translation defines it differently. NASB says strength, other passages say valor, other passages say like possessions or your empire, literally is what it means. But there's another translation that translates it virility. It's the idea of energy. Here's the way I would define strength. She's saying, do not give your testosterone to women. Now we get that, right? It's the idea of manliness. It's the idea of energy. It's the idea of passion. It's the idea of conquering. It's the idea of leading. It's all of those things wrapped up in what the science calls testosterone, what I believe the Bible calls manliness. And she says, don't give your strength or your manliness to women, plural, not a woman, singular. See, a lot of men have this idea that they don't need to give their strength to a woman, that a woman's job is just to get in the kitchen and cook and leave them alone, let them conquer, let them lead. You go out there and get out of the way. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, do not give your strength, your manliness, your testosterone to women, plural. Why? Why not? Because she goes on to say that act of giving yourself, your manliness to women, plural, it will destroy your life. See, it was the same here as it is till today. What she's saying to him is, don't give yourself to all of these women. Don't give your strength and your testosterone, your energy, your manliness to multiple women. Now, for them, it would have been just lusting and then taking on wives and taking on, more ladies. And eventually, the story gets really interesting for Solomon. But for us, it's a whole new ballgame, right? It still means the same thing, that we're not allowed to, called to, designed to cheat. That's not a part of the idea of lusting or pursuing another relationship is absolutely true. Women, plural. But we have a whole new system now that we have to conquer in. And that's the idea of what's on the screen, right? The internet, pornography, all of those things makes pursuing manliness to women, plural, a lot easier, a lot more accessible. And what Solomon's mother is saying to him is that will destroy you. A man of character is first and foremost, according to a woman, he is a man of purity. That there is a one-womanness about him. But it's totally opposite than the world, right? Totally opposite. That's why it even feels weird when we hear that. Why? Well, a lot of you men grew up in locker rooms. You worked on farms. You heard the conversation, right? I know I did. The conversation didn't happen for a 13-year-old boy. Excuse me, Billy, what do you desire in a wife one day? And then Billy goes on to describe his perfect wife, right? Oh, that's very good. I will take notes on that. Those are great attributes. Thank you, Billy, very much. And steps out. What is the conversation in the locker room? Right? What is the conversation? Dude, did you hear Billy hooked up with that girl? What's crazy is Billy hooked up with the girl last week too, a different one. And here's the conversation. Billy is such a stud. He's a man. Because he's hooking up, he's pursuing, he's conquering all these different women. And that's what the world tells us is manliness. And what a woman and what God ultimately is saying to us is that manliness is a single pursuit, a single passion. That your testosterone, your passion, your love, your devotion is not spread out all over the place. It is honed in on one woman. And before you're married, it is your mama. And after you're married, it is your wife. And if you have children, it is your daughters. There's a singleness to that commitment. Let me tell you a story about a man. This man grew up in a nice family. And he had, in essence, what we would say a silver spoon in his mouth. All these nice things, all of these advantages in regards to education and all these things. But also this guy was a really good guy growing up. And he began to build himself and his empire. And it was all going really well. Still a great man. Many of them said he was wise. And he had all of these things and all these possessions, and people would come from all over the place to hear his leadership lessons and his leadership talks. Hey, tell us how to do this, and tell us how we need to run this business. And everyone was pursuing him. Everybody wanted him. And he was a good man. And then one day, he got tempted. Instead of one woman, it was another woman. And then that led to another woman. And it became women in his life. And he began to spread himself very thin. And his business began to collapse. Why? Because his testosterone, his manliness was getting spread out. And at the end of his life, he flopped. He failed. He lost everything. The business that he had built, the respect of leaders all over the world, he lost it all. And you know what? I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to tell you his name. I'm going to tell you who it was. A lot of people don't want to talk to the preacher because they're afraid they're going to be a sermon illustration one day. I ain't going to tell him that. He's going to come out and say, well, this guy that I know, he's battling with this. And it's like, oh, great. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I'm going to tell you his name. I'm going to break pastor code, and I'm just going to tell you who it is. You know who it was that lost everything because of women, plural? Solomon. The guy that this mama's writing to. Mamas know. They know. And she knew that the first thing that could take down her good son was a bunch of women, plural, and giving his manliness to women. You don't think that looking at a different woman every night and multiple women every night on a computer screen is hurting you, damaging you, changing you, dwarfing your manhood? Absolutely. It will destroy you. And by the way, they're actresses. They're fake. They're not real. They're faking life. And we think in our heads that they want us. They want to show us everything. No, they don't. They don't know who you are. They don't care anything about you. As a matter of fact, they want to destroy you. Because the more you look, the more money they get. They don't care anything about you. The same is true today as it was back then. You want to be a godly man? Be a man of purity. Here's the second truth. She tells her son to be a man of sobriety. Be a man of purity, be a man of sobriety. If you think that one hurt, this one is going to really bust some bubbles this morning. This mama spends the majority of her talk, her sermon to her son, the majority of it is on alcohol. The majority. So literally one verse on women, it was the first one, so that's important. But literally 4 verses after that, she deals with the subject of alcohol, and then 2 verses on courage, how you're supposed to live. So let's dive in and look at what she's saying here. Here's where she begins. It is not for kings. Remember, she's speaking first to his identity. She's saying, son, you are a leader. You are the king. You are in charge. It's really important for us because a quick question that I want to ask all the men in the room is on the day that you die, how many men would raise their hands and say, you know what, I just want to be remembered as not a leader? Everything in us desires leadership, conquering. That's why we like Braveheart and all these war movies and all these movies where the men are the heroes. Why? Because we're built that way. We're built to lead. We're built to lead our families. We're built to lead in our jobs. We're built to lead in our church. We're built to lead in our community. We're built to lead, and she's speaking to that. She's saying, don't forget who you are. You're the king. Now, none of us in here are kings, but every single one of us can be and should be and must be a leader. And so she's saying, it's not for the king, the leaders, O Lemuel. It is not for them. Says it again, to drink wine. Or for rulers, again, 3rd time reminding him, you are a leader. It's not for leaders to desire strong drink. For they will drink, she gives the reason why, and forget what has been decreed, and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Give strong drink. Here's what she says. You want somebody to drink? Here's who you give the drinks to. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to him whose life is bitter, who hates his life. And let him drink and forget his poverty. Let him get mindless and remember his trouble no more. So she's speaking to her son and she's saying, you are a leader, and because you are a leader, you can't drink. I'm going to lay out my theology of alcohol right here and right now. Does the Bible say, let me start personally, I do not drink. I don't drink. But I don't drink because, well, the Bible tells me so, and so I don't drink. You know why I don't drink? Because I want to lead. I want to lead with a sound mind. And I don't want to lean on anything to knock the edge off. I want to lead with a sound mind. Do I think that if you drink a beer, you're going to hell? No. Does the Bible say that if you drink one beer, you're going to go to hell? No. But the Bible does say that drunkards, those who just keep on drinking, it's like, well, I'm not a drunk, I only drink, once on the weekends. Why? Why do you got to go back to it? We're gonna hit on why I think most men have to drink on the weekends. I'm going to tell you why here in just a little bit. Actually, this mama tells us why. Drunkards, very simply, are not going to heaven. And there are so many passages of Scripture that talk about that we don't even have time to discuss them. If you drink I would like one alcohol, please. No. If you drink alcohol once, you're not going to hell. I don't believe it. The Bible doesn't say that. However, the Bible gives us a more clear theology on drinking than I think most Southern Baptist churches have taught forever. Here's what she says. It's not for the leaders to drink wine or strong drink to desire. Why? Because of what she said. Here's what she says. She gives him the why. For they will drink, the leaders, they will drink and will forget what is decreed and pervert the rights of the afflicted. What is she saying? She's saying that if you want to drink, what's going to happen is, we all believe this, whatever your theology is on alcohol, all of us would believe that when you drink just a little bit, it starts messing up here, doesn't it? It starts softening it up. It starts making you think differently. It just takes the edge off, whatever we want to call it, but it messes with our mind. And what she's saying is, when you drink, it messes with your mind. And here's the truth. For a leader, you can't forget. You've got to lead with a strong mind. Why? She gives him that reason. Because you've got to defend what has been decreed, what God has said, and also you've got to defend the rights of the afflicted, the innocent. Here's what she's saying. Leaders have to have sharp minds. And to have a sharp mind means you don't forget what you've been called to. And because you've been called to this, what is this calling? The calling is leading, defending, protecting people who are in your life. She lays out this theology. Here's what she says. This goes even further. This should strike a chord with every man in the room, what she's about to say. Here's how you need to give drinks to. Give the strong drinks, and she gives 4 attributes. Give the drinks to those who are perishing, to those who are bitter, so that they'll forget their poverty and remember their trouble, or other translations say misery no more. Here's what she's saying. Give alcohol to the weak. What? What does our world say, right? What does every alcohol and commercial pushing us? What is the conversation around manhood? If you're a man, you drink. Man up, take a sip, down it, right? What is she saying? That's for the weak. The men who are knocking the edge off or just need a little bit, what she says about them is they're perishing. They're weak. They can't, here's what she's saying, they can't hack it. Here's what she's doing. She's dividing them. Here's what she's saying. You want to lead? Here's the decision you've got to make. Don't drink, son. And here's what she's saying. Those of you in the room who are wanting to drink, you go to the back. You're the weak. Those of you who want to drink or don't want to drink, you go to the front because you're the ones that we want us to lead. You're the one that's going to lead your family. You're the one that's going to lead the country. You're the one that's going to lead. Why? Because your mind is sharp and you know what's right and you're going to act on it. All of us know this, myself included. We don't think and act right when we knock the edge off every single night. So what is she saying? Hey, you weak ones, you go to the back. Give the drinks to the ones that can't handle it. But the ones who can, the ones who want to lead, the very few, the select few, because there's going to be so many men that walk out of here and say, whatever, I'm going to keep doing it. Why? Because there's a weakness somewhere that you don't want to let anyone know about. That's what I honestly believe. Why? Because that's what she's saying. When you think about it, Jesus was offered wine on the cross. Why? He was in a state of weakness. Timothy tells Paul, hey, drink alcohol. Why? A lot of people that drink say, well, Paul told Timothy to drink wine. Why? Because he was sick. He was in a state of weakness. And so he told him to drink wine for his stomach. It's the same reason why we would use medicine today. And the only time, in my opinion, that alcohol is referred to in a positive light is when Jesus turned water into wine. But here's the truth. Jesus didn't turn water into wine so that we could all have an excuse to drink. He turned water into wine to show us how powerful he truly was. If that's your hinge pin verse on drinking, you need to really start doing some exegesis on that passage and who Jesus really is. He didn't come to give you permissions. He came to give you power. Let me tell you a story that I think illustrates this real powerfully from another mama. I preached the funeral of a 23-year-old son who OD'd on drugs. I knew him decently. I knew his mom really, really well. She asked me to do the funeral. I was honored and broken to do it. Put yourself in that situation. How do you preach the funeral of a 23-year-old person who OD'd? It was a hard day for me, for sure. 6 months before that, he actually did become a Christian. But he still had those ghosts in his closet, and he relapsed once. And in that relapse, he died. 3 or 4 weeks later, I'm preaching in our college ministry about alcohol. A lot of the college students wanted to know, what's your theology, Blake? What do you think about alcohol? And again, I told them the same thing. Does the Bible say if you drink alcohol, you're going to hell? No, but drunkards do not inherit the kingdom of God. And what benefit does it have to us for those who are strong? For those who are weak? Same theology. She comes up to me as I'm preparing for that sermon. Matter of fact, the day that I was going to preach it on a Wednesday night. And she says to me, can I please speak to you? And I said, sure. She said, I need to tell you something. She said, I need to ask you a question. And she said, do you know who the worst person on the planet is? Who's the worst person on the planet? And I like all of you, I had no idea. In my head, I probably said Satan or I didn't know what to say. And she said, let me tell you who the worst person in the world is. The person who can stop. The person who can stop. What? What did she mean by that? And she said, Blake, the worst person in the world is the person who can drink one beer and stop. Who can drink one glass of wine and stop. Who can drink a couple of beers and then stop. She said, you know why I believe they're the worst people in the world? I said, why? She said, when my son was 13 years old, going through a really difficult time where his dad was not there, he was not present, and he was not leading his family, my 13-year-old son got around a bunch of people who could stop one night. They could sit around a campfire and drink a couple of beers and it'd be fine. They weren't alcoholics necessarily. They could stop. What they didn't realize was that my son had an addict personality and was going through something that none of them had ever been through. And when he saw them drinking, what did he want to do? I want to drink too. And so he drank alcohol for the first time. What they didn't realize that 13-year-old boy couldn't stop. And that drinking led to drugs, and those drugs led to even more serious drugs, and then ultimately ruined his life. He got right, got clean, relapsed, and died. Why? Because when he was 13 years old, he was around a couple of people who could stop. Here's the deal. You can stop. You can have a beer, a glass of wine, and stop, and that's great. But one day you're going to be around a son or a daughter. You're going to be around a niece or a nephew. One of your son's buddies is going to come over to the house while you're knocking the edge off, sitting by the pool or at deer camp. You're going to be fine, and you can stop, and that's totally fine. But that little boy whose parents are about to get a divorce, or that little boy who's struggling with identity and getting bullied in school, that little boy or that little girl, they can't stop, and they're looking at you and thinking, maybe that will help. Maybe that will ease this pain, and you will be the beneficiary of knowing, and you probably will never know, but you will be the one that couldn't stop that led them to never stop. You will be the one that could stop that led them to be this person who could never stop. You want to be a man? You want to lead? You want to rise up and go to the front lines? Then you make a decision by the power and help of God to not participate in this. Because the Bible says so? No. Good grief. No. Because you're called to be a man. And you're called to lead. Here's the last truth. Manhood is defined by two things: character and courage. Character and courage. Be a man of character, it's a man of purity, a man of sobriety. Not my words, not my opinion, not Southern Baptist. Some people are going to be like, well, this is just a Baptist thing. This is a Bible thing. If you want to read this passage and interpret it differently, be my guest, but I would not want to venture into that realm of twisting what is being said by a mama to her son, inspired by God. But be my guest if you'd like to. Here's the third truth. You're a man of courage. Courage. What does she say here? You're a man of ministry. So what's the point? Is manhood just be a good man, be an honorable man, have integrity and do what's right and don't drink and don't look at porn? Like, is that the apex of manhood? Right? Is that what we're called to? Is just be moral? No. She finishes the truth for us when she begins by saying in verse 8, open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all the unfortunate. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and defend the rights of the afflicted and the needy. What is the purpose of manhood? The heart we've dealt with, but the hands, what are we supposed to be doing? I think we have a whole generation of men saying, I don't know what to do with my hands. What am I supposed to do? Just work, get a check, and go home? No. We are called to lead and defend and be protectors and providers and ministers to those who can't lead and protect and defend themselves. It is for the orphan and those in foster care. This is the reason why people decide to be soldiers. Why? Because they want to lead and defend. They have tapped into something that I think the church has totally forgotten, that we are called as men to stand up and fight. And fight against what? Fight against the powers that are coming after the weak. What man in this room would not want to be characterized at the end of this life as someone who stood up for somebody who couldn't stand up for themselves? Who are those people? It's the baby that you're holding right now. It's the children that are in your life. It is the children in this church who many of them don't have a full functioning family system. It's you teaching in a class. It's you leading in some ministry. It's you serving somewhere. It's you taking care of foster kids. It's you volunteering at different places. It's you standing up and leading. It's not going to be found in a hobby or sport or any of those things or work, which all those things are good. They're not evil. But they're not courage. We are called to lead with our words and our work. That's our job. I'm really tired. Physically tired. But I've got enough to show you one more truth, to personalize this for all of us in this room. There's a picture that hangs in my home, and it's from the day that I got married. 11 years ago, nearly in a few weeks, to Joy. And I have this in my home because it is one of the most powerful and simple and beautiful moments that I've ever seen. And the photographer of our wedding had the know-it-all to take a picture in this moment. What you're about to see in this picture are two men, and they're just two guys, and they're both sitting in wheelchairs, and all they're doing is shaking hands. That's it. But what's fascinating is that this was the first moment that they actually met. Matter of fact, it was the only moment that they ever met. And I want to show you the picture. This man right here, this is my dad's dad. We called him Papa Fred. His name was Freddie. He was a farmer. He was a strong man. Matter of fact, in that picture, he probably still had dirt under his fingernails. He loved to hike. He loved taking pictures of nature. He loved his grandkids. Strong man. Defined manhood in very different ways than the other guy, but still very similar. The other guy here, well, that's Joy's granddaddy. That's Miss... I can't look at you. It's Papa. That's Miss Sue's dad. And this moment is the first and only time that they met. And they were broken. They're in wheelchairs. Matter of fact, within 6 to 7 months, both of them passed away. Both defined manhood differently. Both lived very different lives. Pawpaw started the band in Benton, and he was a musician, and he loved his community and loved the parks in Benton, and he did so much for that city. Very different life. Very different life than this man. But why am I showing you this picture? Why am I showing you this? These two men, while they may have been different, two things characterized them at the end of their lives. They were men of character, and they were men of courage. Matter of fact, Papa Fred's life verse was Galatians 6:14. Far be it from me to boast, except in the cross of Jesus Christ, by which the world has been crucified to me and I to the world. That was his theme verse. That's the verse I used to preach his funeral. And Pawpaw, godly man, loved Jesus. Why am I showing you this? That day, I'm speaking just to the men, that day is coming for you. When you're at your granddaughter's wedding, and you'll be at the end of your life. You may have a few months, few years left, but you'll be at the end. And here's my question to you, men specifically. If you changed nothing changed in your life, you lived your life in regards to character and courage the exact same way that you're doing right now, and nothing changed for the next 70 years, and you got to this moment right here, sitting at your granddaughter's wedding. If nothing changed, would you be proud of that man? Matter of fact, let me make it a little deeper for you. Would God be proud of that man? If nothing changed, if you kept living your life, and I'm talking to teenagers, I'm talking to 12-year-olds, I'm not talking about 30-year-olds just alone. I'm talking to every single man in this room. If nothing changed in your life, would you be proud of that man? Nothing. And if the answer is no, if the answer is, man, I may have a bunch of deer on my wall, I may have been at a bunch of sports games. I may have done this and that in regards to professionally, but was I a man of character and courage? Did I defend people who couldn't defend themselves? Was I a man of ministry and purity and sobriety? I don't think so. Then here's the truth. Here's the chance you get. You get to write that story by the power of God. And you get today to man up and lead with character, your heart, and courage, your life. That's the kind of legacy that will impact those around you, and that's the kind of legacy that God Himself looks down at and says, yes, That's why I created you. Not to sit around and look at computer screens and drink beer and live for yourself. That's not why I created you. For so much more I had potential for you. So here's the truth this morning. If you're here and you're a man, and this is an invitation to the women too, not in regards to manhood, but just being right with Jesus. If you're a man here this morning and you don't know Christ, here's the truth. You have no power to become a man of purity and sobriety and ministry. There is nothing in you that can muster that up without Jesus. And you may know about him, but you may not know him. And so this morning, this Father's Day, you may not even be a father. How much better that is, because you still get to get some things right before you have children. But if this morning you need to give your life to Jesus, stop running from him, stop playing the religion game, and start getting right with him starting today by asking him to save you, forgive you, and give you the power to live as a man of character and courage, then my invitation to you is to come forward, man up, and walk up here. And just simply say, I need to be saved. That's it. That's all you need to know. And if there's men in here that man, you're saved, but you're not ready for that day, then get right. The power of Christ in you is the only ability you have to become a man of purity and sobriety and ministry. So this morning, just pray with one of us. We'll have men all up here at the front. The women be up here too to pray with women. Humble yourself enough to just say, I need help. I need Jesus to help me to become the man he's called me to be. Don't waste your life. Don't waste your manliness on yourself. So let's man up. And let's start defining manhood the way God does. Let's pray. Father, I pray that you would do what I can't do now in this moment, that you would stir the hearts of men. For some of them this morning to be saved, for others in the house that they would get right with you, that they are not proud of who they are. For whatever reason, you are looking down on them, knowing there's more potential in them, knowing that you love them, knowing that you have a plan for them. And so, Father, I pray that men in the room would drop whatever they're holding on to, whatever they're clinging to in their idea of manliness, and they would go to the front. Not the front of this church maybe, but the front lines of life, and live and lead with character and courage. God, do immeasurably more in the lives of men than I've ever asked or imagined. In Jesus' name I pray.